Some things just go together. Some things are just meant to be together. It's like that single guy that walked up to the single girl in church and said, you know, some things are just meant to be together. Some things are just better together, like cookies and milk. Things just go better together, like chips and salsa. Some things are just better together, like peanut butter and jelly. Some things are just better together, like sweet and salty, like Barbie and Ken, and baby, like you and me. And this woman, being a victim of a horrendous pickup line, luckily she was a quick-thinking, witty woman. She said, you know what else would be better together if I was with you? A bullet and my brain. I thought that was great. An amazing comeback to a horrendous pickup line. But it is true. Some things are just better together. And in our text today, we see two things that are meant to be together, that are better together. As 2 John focuses on two topics that are divinely connected, and not only in 2 John, but throughout the Bible. Better together, belonging together, divinely connected together, and that is love and truth. The reason why John writes this letter with the topic of love and truth is that while he was writing 2 John and 3 John, he doesn't write it as a historical letter, nor as a doctrinal instruction, but he writes it as a personal letter dealing with people problems. Problems that they were having with people and how to deal with people that have problems. And the old saying is true. Wherever there are people, there will be problems. Wherever there are people, there are problems. And John gives us some insight, inspired by the Spirit, how to deal with people that have problems and how to deal with problems that we have with people. And so 2 John, it deals with people problems generically. You can write that down. 2 John deals with people problems generically. And he focuses on what to do and how to deal with problems that you have with people. And then in 3 John, it deals with people problems specifically. And John will name some people that were causing problems. These people had problems. And what to do when you have people with problems. And so he starts off in this letter by saying the elder. You see, in that day, it was customary to start a letter by signing on. We end letters nowadays by signing off. Love or best wishes or however you end that letter. And then you write your name at the end of the letter. But in those days, as a letter would be written in scroll, it would be appropriate to write your name at the beginning so they would know who it was being written from. And so John starts this letter by saying the elder, almost as a code name, but they would have known who was writing it. For John was the last living apostle of Jesus. Judas, one of the 12, of course, couldn't live with the regret and the shame of denying and betraying Jesus, and so he took his own life. But then the other 12 were martyred for their belief in Jesus. But John, they tried to kill. They actually boiled him in a hot vat of boiling oil, but he wouldn't die. The Lord just supernaturally protected him. They couldn't kill him. And so they banished him on an island of Patmos, where he received the revelation of God that we will get to in January of 2016. But John writes this letter now nearing the age probably of 100, close to 100. Literally, he was an elder. and not only an elder in age, but also an elder, as he would be the last living apostle that walked with Jesus, now really being the patriarch of the church and one of the leaders of the church. And so he says, the elder, and he goes on to say, to the elect lady and her children. Now, 2 John was written to the elect lady. But there is a great debate among great scholars on who this lady actually is. Some say on one side it's an actual woman that John knew, and he's writing to her and her children. But others say, with great documentation and great arguments on both sides, say that the lady is actually a code name for the church. As we know, the church is often referenced as the bride and the bride of Christ, and to love your bride as Christ loves the church. And so whether it's a lady, literally a person, or the church, it doesn't really matter because the truths are the same either way. You can't really make a definite case either way who really the lady is, but it doesn't matter ultimately because the lessons are so important and have tremendous value. But you may say, then why didn't John identify exactly who he was writing to? Because at this time that John was writing this letter, there were some tremendous persecution being poured out on the Christian church. So if this letter fell in the wrong person's hands, or in the enemy's hands, or the persecutor's hands, it could be used as incriminating evidence to go into people's homes and to kill them for their belief. At this time, Christians were in hiding for their belief for Jesus Christ. And so he uses a code name about himself, the elder, and writes in a code name to either a specific woman not named or the church not named as the lady, the elect lady, kind of like James Bond in 007. John gives himself his code name, and so too the church. But like I said, it doesn't matter whether it's a lady individually or a church congregationally that he's writing to. Because in this letter, John shows us how to deal with people problems as it relates to three things. Number one, this house, congregationally. Have you ever wished that you could be a fly on a wall or get to have personal friendship or connection with someone that you greatly aspire to be like, or someone that you want to emulate in your life, or someone that you respect? Maybe you're a techie type of guy and you thought, man, it would have been so great to be a fly on the wall in Steve Jobs' garage when he was building those first computers, to understand how his mind worked. Or perhaps you are one that have a mentor in your life, and man, it would be so great to get to know how they do what they do. If only I could sit at that person's feet for a while and get to see what was going on in their life or in their mind. Wouldn't that be great? Well, as a pastor, I have often thought, wouldn't it have been great to be there during the first century early church, to get to see what the early church, that first church, what they were really like, what they were doing, and how they did leadership development, and how they conducted themselves, and what their worship services were like. And I, as a pastor, have always thought, man, wouldn't it have been great to know exactly in detail with a picture in your mind of how that was in that day, because that was a church that turned the world upside down. And I desire to pastor a church that really turns the world upside down, or in this case, right side up. That's really been my desire as a pastor. And so I often thought, man, that would have been so great to be there, to see how they do what they do and what their church was like. But in this letter, we get to see that. We get to have that insight in this personal letter, as it's not written in church doctrine or in instruction, but it's written in a personal way of how to deal simply with problems, which is a great encouragement to me. Because if that church, the church in that day, was a church that was filled with people problems, Oh, that's a great encouragement to me, because that means that when our church is filled with people problems, it's okay. God still can use it. His grace is still sufficient, and he still can use our church to turn the world upside down as well. Their church, they saw people added to the church daily. Thousands of people coming to know Christ. But still, they were a church that had problems. Wherever imperfect people gather, there will always be imperfections. Wherever people get together, there will always be problems, because with people come problems. A church that has no problems has no people. That's why if you ever hear of this perfect church and someone tells you about this amazing perfect church, whatever you do, don't go to it. Because if you go to it, it will no longer be a perfect church. Because people have problems. We all have problems. And with our issues, with our problems, whenever imperfect people get together, there's bound to be problems. But John shows us how to deal with people problems as it relates to this house congregationally, number one. Secondly, John shows us how to deal with people problems as it relates to not only this house congregationally, but number two, your house. Specifically, literally, as it relates to your home, your family. Someone once wrote, "Home is where people go when they're tired of being nice." And I thought that's sad, but so many times true in so many cases. Where when you go home, it's no longer time to put the smile on or pretend like you're happy. But it's the time that you're real. And when you go home, a lot of times with the burdens of the week or the stress of the day, you're not really nice when you go home, when really that should be the place of refuge. And maybe that's true for you in your life and in your home, that when you go home, it's not a place of refuge, it's a place of warfare. And you feel like whenever you go home, it's when people aren't nice. And so you can learn, too, some lessons for how to deal with people with problems or problems that you have with people in your house specifically. Be that a roommate or a sibling or a child or a parent. And last, John shows us how to deal with people problems as it relates to number three, his house individually. His house, which is your heart. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 17 says that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. That word dwell is an interesting word. It means to be at home at. That Christ would feel at home in your heart. And maybe there's some problems within your heart, and you're not sure how to deal with those problems in his home, your heart. You will get some specific instruction of how to deal with those problems. For Jesus has been standing at the door and knocks. And he said if anyone would open, that he would come in. And he would sup with him, commune with him, talking about having that closest communion, that close relationship, fellowship with that person, if that person would open their heart to him. And for many, if not all of you here today, you've opened your heart to Jesus. And so he comes in. But there still can be problems within our heart. And so we get some information, instruction, how to deal with the problems within our heart. And so how do we deal with people problems? Be that in the house congregationally, or your house with family, or his house individually. Watch the focus. Verse 1, continuing on, he says, whom I love in truth. Talking about the elect lady, he says, whom I love. Be that a woman with problems or a church congregation with problems, he says, I love in truth. But not only I, but also all those who have known the truth. Be that a lady who had problems individually or a church congregationally, John says, I love in truth. But not only me, but all who know the truth. Last Wednesday, we saw that the truth is Jesus Christ. And we focused on the life aspect of that in a message that I loved the title of. It was called Get a Life. And talking about Jesus as the life. From that verse that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. But I want to focus today on Jesus being the truth. And for us who know the truth, who have the truth, who is Jesus, John says for those who know the truth will be loving in truth. All those who know the truth, anyone who knows Jesus is going to be loving those people, be that a church congregation or a person who has problems. But how? How do we love people with problems? It's so much easier not to love people with problems. How do we? Because, verse 2, of the truth. Jesus, which abides in us and will be in us forever. Grace, mercy, and peace will be with you from God the Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of the Father. Notice the focus, notice the parentheses, in, what does it say? Truth and, come on, church, you got to do better than that. In truth and love. Together. Truth and love always go together. In truth and love. And then he says in verse 4, I rejoiced greatly that I have found some of your children, be that those who came to Christ through the church, or be that her actual children of that woman. I rejoice greatly that I found some of your children walking in truth, as we have received commandment from the Father. And now I plead with you, lady, not as though I wrote a new commandment to you, but that which we have heard from the beginning, that we love one another. See, the ongoing theme of John's writings is love. Be that the Gospel of John, be that 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, or the book of Revelation, the theme of all of John's writings always comes back to and on the topic of love. So much so that John wrote about love that he actually began to be called the apostle of love. For John talks about love more than any other writer throughout the entire Bible. But he also, in his writings, emphasizes the topic of truth more than any other writer throughout the Bible. In the Gospel of John, John mentions the topic of truth 20 times. In 1 John, the book that we just finished studying, John mentions truth 9 times. And in just those 5 verses that we read, 4 verses, in the first 4 verses that we read, John mentions truth 5 times. Now, I say this all to point out a powerful point, that truth and love are beautifully intertwined, connected divinely by God, like police and Krispy Kremes, like pregnant women and weird cravings, like cookies and milk and chips and salsa. Things just are better together. And listen, truth and love are the same. They are better together. They belong together. John always gives love with truth, and he always gives truth with love. And the reason is you cannot give true love without truth. And you cannot have truth without true love. And so when it comes to loving people, it's easy to repel from sharing a word of correction with someone that needs to hear it, or confronting somebody that you love because you love them, you don't want to confront them. And so it's easy to not have those difficult conversations that we need to have because we, quote unquote, love them. And so it's easy to repel from those conversations, not have those conversations, not share what that person needs to hear because we love them. So I'm not going to bring up that issue. I'm not going to talk about that sensitive topic. I'm not going to be able to speak to that person openly or candidly in a way that needs to be, because I'm just going to, and we've heard it said, I'm just going to love that person. But number one, and the 3 points for today, if you love someone, the truth is shared. If you love somebody, the truth is shared. I've heard it said way too many times by Christians, I'm just going to love that person, as an excuse why I'm not going to bring up that difficult topic. I'm not going to confront a person that needs confronting. I'm not going to speak openly or candidly about that sin issue. We just need to love that person that's living in sin. We just need to love that couple who's living together in sexual sin. We just need to love that person that's accepting that sinful lifestyle as part of their life or who they are. We just need to love that person. Aren't we just called to love them? Jesus is love. We just need to share love and show love. So I'm not going to give correction or confront them. Who am I? You know what? I just want to make sure that my love wins them over. And yes, it's true that we win them by love. But love is never given at the cost of not sharing the truth. If you know someone who, according to the Bible, is on a path of destruction, a person that truly loves them will say something, will confront that person for the hopes of restoration and correction. Not condemnation, but correction, to lift that person up if that person is on a path, according to the Bible, of destruction. In the same way, let me illustrate it to you this way. If you're coming from a road and you were lucky enough to know that the bridge washed out, and so you didn't drive off of a cliff, so you're headed back, but all of a sudden, you see one of your friends that was tailgating with you, now catching up and flying by you, you going in the opposite direction. And they're going at fast speeds on this path. You know that that path leads to destruction. You know if they don't stop, that they are going to drive off of a cliff and be destroyed in their life. What do? Well, if you love that person, you're going to do whatever you can do to reach that person before they're off the cliff. Whatever you can do to stop that person, to share with that person, listen, the path you're going on is a path of destruction. I've been there. I've seen it. I know what comes of that. Don't go there. Don't keep going in that direction. You got to turn around, which the Bible uses the word repent, which means to turn and go in the opposite direction. Talking about repentance. If you love that person, you won't say, well, you know what? They'll figure it out. I'll just wave at them and smile to them, love on them, let them know it's okay. They'll hopefully figure it out one day too. No, if you love them, you'll do whatever you can to turn your car around. It doesn't matter how much resources you spend or time or energy to reach them. You will do whatever you can do to reach them because you love them. But oftentimes, people use the word love as a reason why they don't share with somebody or confront somebody or talk to somebody openly about a topic that needs to be discussed. Be that between a husband and wife, a friend, a brother, sister, parent, child, whoever it may be, co-worker, classmate. I'm just going to love them and win them by loving them. If you love them, you will share the truth with them. But oftentimes we use the word love for others, which is really a lie because it's love for others. It's really love for ourselves masquerading as love for others. It's really a lie of love for others because we don't love them enough to share with them or to talk with them because we love them. We love ourselves more. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to have that hard conversation. We don't know what might come of that relationship if that conversation goes south. And because we love ourselves, saved, I'm going to heaven, more than we love others who are still on the path of destruction that are in our lives, because we love ourselves more, we lie to ourselves and say, I'm just going to love on them, which is not love. It's love for ourselves masquerading as love for others. So if you love somebody, number one, the truth is shared. Number two, when the truth is shared, it's always shared out of love and in love. So if you love somebody, the truth will be shared. But when it comes time to sharing the truth, be that a difficult conversation or a confrontation, whatever it may be, when the truth is shared, it's always shared out of love and in love. The why you have a difficult conversation with a person is out of love. The why do I have this conversation? Why do I go there? Why do I go out of my way to talk to that person, to share with that person? It's always out of love, because I love you. And that's why I want to talk to you, because I love you enough. I feel uncomfortable about this. It's not something I really want to do, but I love you. And because I love you, I care about you. That's the why. And the way you share it is always in love. The why, it's out of love, and the way you share it is in love, so that the words that you speak aren't words of breaking, but words of building. Words of encouragement, to encourage those, to exhort those to do what is right before God. But people don't want to share the truth, because sharing the truth is uncomfortable. It's really hard to connect love and truth together, isn't it? Love and truth, to bring those together can be so tricky, so difficult. It's so hard, because with honesty, integrity comes speaking candidly. But with love and humility comes with kind of smoothing things over. So how do I really combine love and truth? And that can cause a tension in our hearts of the responsibility to share the truth, but also the responsibility to show the love. Share truth, show love. And there's a tension between those two. There really is, and you've experienced it. I mean, men, what do you say when that person, whether you're dating or married to, comes to you and says, does this dress make me look fat? I mean, what do you say to that question? They wouldn't be asking you that question unless they thought it might, and there's a chance of that. So what do you say? Well, truth would say, yeah, of course. You wouldn't ask me that if it didn't. That thing's hideous. Take it off. That would be truth. But love would say, nothing could ever make you look fat, baby. You look amazing. That would be love. So what do you do when combining those two things? And if you just combine those two statements, it's to answer that question, nothing could ever make you look fatter than you already are. I mean, how do I combine truth and love? I need to speak truth, but I also need to share love. Women, what do you do? All my single ladies, when that single guy walks up to you and pops the question, will you marry me? No, not that one. The other question, will you go out with me? But he's thinking, will you marry me? Will you go out with me? What do you say when that guy asks you? Why does it have to be that guy? That guy. Can't believe that guy asked me. What do you say? Now, truth and honesty would say, not in a million years, dude. And I don't even believe in evolution. So there's not a chance. But love and humility would say, well, you seem like a nice guy, and I would enjoy getting to know you. I mean, I'm sure we could be friends. What do you say? It's a difficult situation. Now, those things illustrate it in a funny way, but it can be difficult, especially when it comes to someone's eternal destiny or the lifestyle they accepted as their own. What do we say? Listen, we have a responsibility to speak the truth, to share truth. But whenever we share truth, we need to make sure we share it in love. Love can change the way that we share truth. Because sometimes we say, you know what, I'm just going to tell that person what's what. And so you see Christians, so-called, with signs picketing, saying, you're going to hell, repent or burn. Truth, perhaps, but where's the love? And you know that that isn't the truth from God because it's not attached with love. That's not the truth that Christ would have shared, because whenever truth is shared in the Bible, it's always connected to and alongside of love. It's shared in love and out of love. So it's not just we need to tell them what's what, but the way that you say it in love will change how you say it. Like the headline that I read, it all comes out different in the way that you say it. I read this headline in the news. It said this: police helps dog bite victim. And when I read that, I'm like, what in the world? The police helps dog bite a victim? I mean, that's hilarious. I mean, here there's a person, a victim to a dog attack, and the police runs up and starts biting the victim too. I was like, what in the world? Until I realized it's all how it's said. It's supposed to be said, police helps dog bite victim. A person that was a victim to a dog bite, and the police helped that person. That's how it was supposed to be read. But the meaning always comes out different in how it's said. And so too, when you share truth, oh, Christian, allow that truth to be shared out of love that you have for that person. And always in love in the way that you share it with that person. Because truth without love causes misunderstanding. Truth without love, people misunderstand what you're saying and why you're saying it because it does not have love. Truth without love causes misunderstanding. But listen, love without truth causes misinformation. We're not just to love on people. I'm just going to love them and never show truth or share truth with them. No, that is sloppy agape. Sloppy agape. That's really what it is, just loving on people. Truth goes with love, and love goes with truth. And when those two things are combined together, when those two things are shared together, those two ingredients combined makes a powerful process in people's hearts as it begins that work of both the truth of God's word and the love of Jesus Christ combined together. And so if we are going to be a loving church congregationally, or if you are going to be a loving person in your family, or if you're going to have Christ be in your hearts personally, there has to be love and truth. Be that with the children of the house, Regenerate Church. Be that with the children in your house, or be that with the childless behaviors that are birthed out of your own heart in his house. There always needs to be love and truth. So church, may we be those people who, yes, share love and win people over by the love of God, but never forsake giving the truth from God. The love of God and the truth from God. And may we give those two things together because we love people.